Hello, and welcome to another exciting adventure of the Unlucky Streams. I am your host today, the Unlucky Angel Star. At least I currently am just called that at the moment, but I'll get to that sometime later, probably tomorrow, as we're going to be doing a Cyber 6 WatchNet tomorrow. As you can tell, today is the final chapter of the Percy Jackson readings, and unfortunately, I think this will be the end of these readings, mostly because, well, I don't think there's many people who actually watch me for reading books. Well, anywho, if you're new to this little stream, hello and welcome, and I'll give you guys a special recap on what's been going on this past through book. As we've gone through nearly 20 chapters of this entire series, or I think we're on chapter 20, hang on. Yeah, we're literally right on chapter 20. So anyways, Percy Jackson, it turns out, is the son of Poseidon, the god of the sea in Greek mythology, and apparently has been accused as the lightning thief, stealing Zeus's thunderbolt, and he travels all the way from New York City to Los Angeles in order to get the lightning bolts. The reason he goes to Los Angeles is because that's where the underworld is. He's already gone there. I'm not going to go through detail how he gets through there, because there's a lot of fun stuff in it. Trust me on this one. But we meet Hades. It turns out he didn't steal the lightning bolt, and also his helm is missing. The helm that allows him to turn invisible. Invisible, not invincible. That is something totally different. Anywho, Percy escapes along with his friends, Annabeth, who's a daughter of... man, I always keep forgetting all the gods' names. It's basically their... It was Athena. Yes, it was. I think it was Athena. Sorry, I'm just always a forgetful know-it. Anywho. And also Grover, who is a satyr who is supposed to protect Percy. But one thing led to another, yada yada yada. They were going to save Percy's mom, who was thought to be dead, as a bargaining chip Hades had. And it turns out Percy had the lightning bolt the whole time in his backpack that didn't originally belong to him, but... we're going to find out right here, right now. So, without further ado, let's get reading as we enter Chapter 20. I battle my jerk relative. A Coast Guard boat picked us up, but they were too busy to keep us for long, or to wonder how 3 kids in street clothes had gotten into the middle of the bay. There was a disaster to mop up. The radios were jammed with distress calls. They dropped us off at the Santa Monica Pier with towels around our shoulders and water bottles that said, "I'm a junior Coast Guard," and sped off to save more people. Our clothes were soaping wet, even mine. When the Coast Guard boat had appeared, I intently prayed they wouldn't pick me out of the water and find me perfectly dry, which might have raised some eyebrows. So I'd willed myself to get soaked. Sure enough, my usual waterproof magic had abandoned me. I was also barefoot, because I'd given my shoes to Grover. Better the Coast Guard wonder why one of us was barefoot than wonder why one of us had hooves. After reaching dry land, we stumbled down the beach, watching the city burn against a beautiful sunrise. I felt as if I'd just come back from the dead, which I had. My backpack was heavy with Zeus's master bolt. My heart was even heavier from seeing my mother. "I don't believe it," Annabeth said. "We went all that way." "It was a trick," I said. "A strategy worthy of Athena." "Hey," she warned. "You get it, don't you?" She dropped her eyes. Her anger faded. "Yeah, I get it." "Well, I don't," Grover complained. "Would somebody..." "Percy," Annabeth said. "Sorry about your mother. I'm so sorry." I pretend not to hear her. If I talked about my mother, I was going to start crying like a little kid. "The prophecy was right," I said. "You shall go west and face the god who has turned." But it wasn't Hades. Hades didn't want war among the big 3. Someone else pulled off the theft. Someone stole Zeus's master bolt and Hades' helm and framed me because I'm Poseidon's kid. Poseidon will get blamed for it by both sides by sundown today. There will be a 3-way war, and I'll have caused it. Grover shook his head, mystified. But who would be that sneaky? Who would want war that bad? I stopped in my tracks, looking down the beach. Gee, let me think. There he was, waiting for us, in his black leather duster and his sunglasses, an aluminum baseball bat propped on his shoulders. His motorcycle rumbled beside him, his headlight turning the sand red. "Hey, kid," Ares said, seeming genuinely pleased to see me. "You was supposed to die." "You tricked me," I said. "You stole the helm and the Master Bolt." Ares grinned. "Well now, I didn't steal them personally. Gods taking each other's symbols of power. I can't talk for some reason. That's a big no-no. But you're not the only hero in the world who can run errands." "Who did you use? Clarice? She was there at the winter solstice." The idea seemed to amuse him. "Doesn't matter. The point is, kid, you're impeding the war effort. See, you've got to die in the underworld. Then old Seaweed will be mad at Hades for killing you. Corpsbreath will have Zeus's Master Bolt, so Zeus will be mad at him, and Hades is still looking for this." From his pocket he took out a ski cap, the kind bank robbers wear, and placed it between the handlebars of his bike. Immediately, the cap transformed into an elaborate bronze war helmet. "The Helm of Darkness," Grover gasped. "Exactly," Ares said. "Now where was I? Oh yeah. Hades will be mad at both Zeus and Poseidon, because he doesn't know who took this. Pretty soon, we got a nice little 3-way slugfest going." "But they're your family," Annabeth protested. Ares shrugged. "Best kind of war. Always the bloodiest. Nothing like watching your relatives fight, I always say." "You gave me the backpack in Denver," I said. "The Master Bolt was in there the whole time." "Yes and no," Ares said. "It's probably too complicated for your little mortal brain to follow, but the backpack is the Master Bolt's sheath. Just morphed a bit. The bolt is connected to it, sort of like that sword you got, kid. It always returns to your pocket, right?" I wasn't sure how Ares knew about that, but I guess a god of war had to make it his business to know about weapons. "Anyway," Ares continued, "I tinkered with the magic a bit, so the bolt would only return to the sheath once you reach the underworld. You get close to Hades, bingo, you got mail. If you died along the way, no loss. I still had the weapon." "Well, why not just keep the Master Bolt for yourself?" I said. "Why send it to Hades?" Ares got a twitch in his jaw. For a moment, it was almost as if he was listening to another voice deep inside his head. "Why didn't I... Yeah, with that kind of firepower." He held the trance for 1 second, 2 seconds, exchanged nervous looks with Annabeth. Ares' face cleared. "I didn't want the trouble. Better have you caught red-handed holding the thing." "You're lying," I said. "Sending the bolt to the underworld wasn't your idea, wasn't it?" "Of course it was." Smoke drifted up from his sunglasses as if they were about to catch fire. "You didn't order the theft, I guess. Someone else sent a hero to steal the 2 items. Then when Zeus sent you to hunt him down, you caught the thief. But you didn't turn him over to Zeus. Something convinced you to let him go. You kept the items until another hero could come along and complete the delivery. That thing in the pit is ordering you around.
I am the god of war. I take orders from no one. I don't have dreams.
I hesitated. Who said anything about dreams? Ares looked agitated, but he tried to cover it with a smirk.
Let's get back to the problem at hand, kid. You're alive. I can't have you taking that bolt to Olympus. You just might get those hard-headed idiots to listen to you. So I've got to kill you. Nothing personal.
He snapped his fingers. The sand exploded at his feet and outcharged a wild boar, even larger and uglier than the one whose head hung above the door of the cabin 7 of Camp Half-Blood. The beast pawed the sand, glaring at me with beady eyes as it lowered its razor-sharp tusks and waited for the command to kill. I stepped into the surf. Fight me yourself, Ares. He laughed, but I heard a little edge to his laughter, an uneasiness. You've only got one talent.
You've only got one talent, kid. Running away. You ran from the Chimera. You ran from the underworld. You don't have what it takes.
Scared?
In your adolescent dreams.
But his sunglasses were starting to melt from the heat of his eyes.
No direct involvement. Sorry, kid. You're not at my level.
Annabeth said, Percy, run! The giant boar charged, and I was done running from monsters, or Hades, or Ares, or anybody. As the boar rushed me, I uncapped my pen and sidestepped. Riptide appeared in my hands. I slashed upwards. The boar's severed right tusk fell at my feet, while the disoriented animal charged into the sea. I shouted, Wave! Immediately, a wave surged up from nowhere and engulfed the boar, wrapping around it like a blanket. The beast squealed once in terror. Then it was gone, swallowed by the sea. I turned back to Ares. You gonna fight me now? I asked. Or are you gonna hide behind another pet pig? Ares' face was purple with rage.
Watch it, kid. I could turn you into
a cockroach, I said. Or a tapeworm. Yeah, I'm sure. That'd save you from getting your godly hide whipped, wouldn't it? Flames danced around the top of his glasses.
Oh man, you are really asking to be smashed into a grease spot.
If I lose, turn me into anything you want. Take the bolt. If I win, the helm and the bolt are mine, and you have to go away. Ares sneered. He swung the baseball bat off his shoulders.
How would you like to get smashed? Classic or modern?
I showed him my sword.
That's cool, dead boy,
he said.
Clarice it is.
Oh, sorry, I misread that.
Classic it is.
I need some drink. Just gonna open this. That's hitting the spot. Anyways, the baseball bat changed into a huge two-handed sword. The hilt was a large silver skull with a ruby in its mouth. Percy, Annabeth said, don't do this. He's a god. He's a coward, I told her. She swallowed. Wear this at least, for luck. She took off her necklace. With her 5 years' worth of camp beads and the ring from her father, and tied it around my neck. Reconciliation, she said. Athena and Poseidon, together. My face felt a little warm, but I managed to smile. Thanks. Take this, Grover said. He handed me a flattened tin can, but he'd probably been saving in his pocket for 1,000 miles. The satyrs stand behind you. Grover, I don't know what to say. He patted me on the shoulder. I stuffed the tin can in my back pocket.
You all done saying goodbye?
Ares came toward me, his black leather duster trailing behind him, his sword glinting like fire in the sunrise. I've been fighting for
eternity, kid. My strength is unlimited, and I cannot die. What have you got?
Smaller ego, I thought, but I said nothing. I kept my feet in the surf, backing into the water up to my ankles. I thought back to what Annabeth had said at the Denver diner so long ago. Ares has strength. That's all he has. Even strength has to bow to wisdom sometimes. He cleaved downward at my head, but I wasn't there. My body thought for me. The water seemed to push me into the air, and I catapulted over him, slashing as I came down. But Ares was just as quick. He twisted, and the strike that should have caught me directly in the spine was deflected at the end of his sword hilt. He grinned.
Not bad, not bad.
He slashed again, and I was forced to jump onto dry land. I tried to sidestep to get back to the water, but Ares seemed to know what I wanted. He outmaneuvered me, pressing so hard I had to put all my concentration on not getting sliced into pieces. I kept backing away from the surf. I couldn't find any openings to attack. I sword had reached several feet longer than Anklum Usmos. Getting close, Luke told me once. Back in our sword class, when you've got the shorter blade, get in close. I stepped inside with a thrust, but Ares was waiting for that. He knocked my blade out of my hand and kicked me in the chest. I went airborne, 20, maybe 30 feet. I would have broken my back if I hadn't crashed into the soft sand of a dune. Percy! Annabeth yelled. Cops! I was seeing double. My chest felt like it had just been hit with a battering ram. But I managed to get to my feet. I couldn't look away from Ares, for fear he'd slice me in half. But out of the corner of my eye, I saw red lights flashing on the shoreline. Boulevard. Cars' doors were slamming. There, officer, somebody yelled. See? Cop voice. Looks like that kid on TV.
What the heck?
That guy was armed, another cop said. Call for backup. I rolled to one side of Ares' blade, slashed the sand. I rolled to one side as Ares' blade slashed the sand. I ran for my sword, scooped it up, and launched a sweep at Ares' feet, only to find the blade deflected again. Ares seemed to know exactly what I was going to do the moment before I did it. I set back toward the surf, forcing him to follow.
Admit it, kid, Ares said. You've got no hope. I'm just toying with you.
My senses were working overtime. I now understood what Annabeth had said about ADHD keeping you alive in battle. I was wide awake, noticing every single detail. I could see where Ares was tensing. I could tell which way he would strike. At the same time, I was aware of Annabeth and Grover, 30 feet to my left. I saw a second cop car pulling up, siren wailing. Spectators, people who have been wandering the streets because of the earthquake, were starting to gather. Among the crowd, I thought I saw a few who were walking with the strange, trotting gait of disguised satyrs. There were shimmering forms of spirits, too, as if the dead had risen from Hades to watch the battle. I heard the flap of leathery wings circling somewhere above. More sirens. I stepped farther into the water, but Ares was fast. The tip of his blade ripped my sleeve and grazed my forearm. The police voice on the megaphone said, "Drop the guns! Set them on the ground, now!" Guns? I looked at Ares' weapon. It seemed to be flickering sometimes. Sometimes it looked like a shotgun. Sometimes a two-handed sword. I didn't know what the humans were seeing in my hands. I was pretty sure it wouldn't make them like me. Ares turned to glare at our spectators, which gave me a moment to breathe. There were 5 police cars now, and a line of officers crouching behind them. pistols trained on us.
This is a private matter, Ares bellowed. Be gone!
He swept his hand, and the wall of red flames rolled across the patrol cars. The police barely had time to dive for cover before their vehicles exploded. The crowds behind them scattered, screaming. Ares roared with laughter.
Now, little hero, let's add you to the barbecue.
Ares slashed. I deflected the blade. I got close enough to strike, tried to fake him out with a feint, but my blow was knocked aside. The waves were hitting me in the back now. Ares was up to his thighs, wading in after me. I felt the rhythm of the sea, the waves growing larger as the tide rolled in, and suddenly I had an idea. Little waves, I thought, and the water behind me seemed to recede. I was holding back the tide by force of will, but tension was building, like carbonation behind a cork. Ares came toward, grinning confidently. I lowered my blade, as if I were too exhausted to go on. Wait for it, I told the sea. Pressure now was almost lifting me off my feet. Ares raised his sword. I released the tide and jumped, rocketing straight over Ares on a wave. A 6-foot wall of water smashed him full in the face, leaving him cursing and sputtering with a mouthful of seaweed. I landed behind him with a splash and feinted toward his head, as I'd done before. He turned in time to raise his sword, but this time he was disoriented. He didn't anticipate the trick. I changed directions, lunged to the side, and stabbed Riptide straight down into the water, sending the point through the god's heel. The roar that followed made Hades' earthquake look like a minor event. The very sea was blasted back from Ares, leaving a wet circle of sand 50 feet wide. Ichor, the gold blood of the gods, flowed from a gash of the war god's boot. The expression of his face was beyond hatred. It was pain, shock, complete disbelief that he'd been wounded. He limped toward me, muttering ancient Greek curses. Something stopped him. It was as if a cloud covered the sun, but worse, light faded. Sound of color drained away. A cold, heavy presence passed over the beach, slowing time, dropping the temperature to freezing, made me feel like life was hopeless. Fighting was useless. The darkness lifted. Ares looked stunned. Police cars were burning behind us. The crowd of spectators had fled. Annabeth and Grover stood on the beach in shock, watching the water flood back from around Ares' feet, his glowing golden ichor dissipating in the tide. Ares lowered his sword.
You have made an enemy, godling, he told me. You have sealed your fate. Every time you raise your blade in battle, every time you hope for success, you will feel my curse. Beware, Perseus Jackson. Beware.
His body began to glow. Percy? Annabeth shouted, "Don't watch!" I turned away as the god Ares revealed his true immortal form. Umsao knew that if I looked, I would disintegrate into ashes. The light died. I looked back. Ares was gone. The tide rolled out to reveal Hades' bronze helm of darkness. I picked it up and walked toward my friends. Before I got there, I heard the flapping of leathery wings. 3 evil-looking grandmas with lace hats and fiery whips drifted down from the sky and landed in front of me. The middle Fury, the one who had been Mrs. Dodds, stepped forward. Her fangs were bared, but for once, she didn't look threatening. She looked more disappointed, if she'd been planning to have me for supper, but had decided I'd give her indigestion.
"We saw the whole thing," she hissed. "So,
It truly was not you. Truly was not you. I tossed her the helmet, which she caught in surprise. Return that to Lord Hades, I said. Tell him the truth. Tell him to call off the war. She hesitated, then ran a forked tongue over her green leathery lips. Live well, Percy Jackson. Become a true hero. But if you do not, if you ever come into my clutches again, she cackled, savoring the idea. Then she and her sisters rose on their bat wings, fluttering into the smoke-filled sky, and disappeared. I joined Grover and Annabeth, who were staring at me in amazement. Percy, Grover said. It was so incredibly terrifying, Annabeth said. Annabeth. Cool, Grover corrected. I didn't feel terrified. I certainly didn't feel cool. I was tired and sore and completely drained of energy. Did you guys feel that? Whatever it was? I asked. They both nodded uneasily. Must have been the Furies overhead, Grover said. Though I wasn't sure. Something had stopped Ares from killing me. Whatever could do that was a lot stronger than the Furies. I looked at Annabeth, and an understanding passed between us. I knew now what was in the pit. That pit. What was spoken from the entrance of Tartarus. I reclaimed my backpack from Grover and looked inside. The Master Bolt was still there. Such a small thing to almost cause World War III. We have to get back to New York, I said. By tonight. That's impossible, Annabeth said. Unless we fly, I agreed. She stared at me. Fly, like in an airplane, which you were warned never to do, lest Zeus strike you out of the sky, and carrying a weapon that was more destructive power than a nuclear bomb. Yeah, I said. Pretty much exactly like that. Come on. Okie dokie. End of chapter 20. So far, so good. We had this awesome battle against Ares, who's the true lightning thief. Sort of. We'll find out who you'll understand what happens in a bit. In case you're wondering what I'm drinking, it's a sparkling ice, black cherry flavored. I like this stuff a lot. It's not a Calypso lemonade, but it's pretty good. It tastes pretty good, actually. I keep finding discounts for it. Anywho, chapter 21. I settle my tab. It's funny how humans can wrap their mind around things and fit them into their version of reality. Girena told me that long ago. As usual, I didn't appreciate his wisdom until much later. According to the LA News, the explosion at the Santa Monica beach had been caused when a crazy kidnapper fired a shotgun at a police car. He accidentally hit a gas main that had ruptured during the earthquake. This crazy kidnapper, aka Ares, was the same man who had abducted me and two other adolescents in New York and brought us across the country on a 10-day odyssey of terror. Poor little Percy Jackson wasn't an international criminal after all. He caused commotion on the Greyhound bus in New York trying to get away from his captor, and afterwards, witnesses would even swear they had seen the leather-clad man on the bus. Why didn't I remember him before? The crazy man had caused the explosion in the St. Louis Ark. After all, no kid would have done that. A concerned waitress in Denver had seen the man threatening his abductees outside her diner. Gotten a friend to take a photo and notified the police. Finally, brave Percy Jackson, I was beginning to like this kid, had stolen a gun from his captor in Los Angeles and battled him shotgun to rifle on the beach. Police had arrived just in time, but in a spectacular explosion, 5 police cars had been destroyed and the captor had fled. No fatalities had occurred. Percy Jackson and his 2 friends were safely in police custody. The Reporters fed us this whole story. We just nodded and acted tearful and exhausted, which wasn't hard, and played victimized kids for the cameras. All I want, choking back the tears, is to see my loving stepfather again. Every time I was on TV calling me a delinquent punk, I knew somehow he would be okay. I know he'll want to reward each and every person in this beautiful city of Los Angeles with a free major appliance from his store. Here's the phone number. Karma. I knew there was no choice but to fly. I hoped Zeus could cut me some slack considering the circumstances. It was still hard to force myself on board the flight. Takeoff was a nightmare. Every spot of turbulence was scarier than a Greek monster. I didn't unclench my hands from the armrests until we touched down safely to La Guardia. The local press was waiting for us outside security, but we managed to evade them thanks to Annabeth, who lured them away in her visible Yankees cap, shouting, "They're over by the frozen yogurt, come on!" Then rejoined us at baggage claim. We split up at the taxi stand. I told Annabeth and Grover to go back to Half-Blood Hill, and let Chiron know what had happened. They protested, and it was hard to let them go after all we'd been through. But I knew I had to do this last part of the quest by myself. If things went wrong, if the gods didn't believe me, I wanted Annabeth and Grover to survive to tell Chiron the truth. I hopped in a taxi and headed to Manhattan. 30 minutes later, I walked into the lobby of the Empire State Building. I must have looked like a homeless kid, with my tattered clothes and my scraped up face. I hadn't slept in at least 24 hours. I went up to the guard at the front desk and he said, 600th floor. He was reading a huge book with a picture of a wizard on the front. I wasn't much into fantasy, but the book must have been good, because the guard took a while to look up. "No such floor, kiddo. I need an audience with Zeus." Give me a vacant smile. "Sorry?" "You heard me. I was about to decide this guy was just a regular mortal, and I'd better run for it before he called the straitjacket portal. And he said, 'No appointment, no audience, kiddo. Lord Zeus doesn't see anyone unannounced.' Well, I'll think he'll make an exception." I slipped off my backpack and unzipped the top. Guard looked inside at the metal cylinder, not getting what it was for a few seconds. And then his face went pale. "This isn't..." "Yes, it is, I promise. You want me to take it out and..." No. He scrambled out of his seat, fumbled around his desk for a key card, then handed it to me. "Insert this into the security slot. Make sure nobody else is in the elevator with you." I did as he told me. As soon as the elevator doors closed, I slipped the key into the slot. The card disappeared, and a new button appeared on the console. I read one that said 600. I pressed it and waited and waited. Muzak played. Raindrops keep falling on my head. Finally, ding. The door slid open. I stepped out and almost had a heart attack. I was standing on a narrow stone walkway in the middle of the air. Below me was Manhattan, from the height of an airplane. In front of me, white marble steps wound up the spine of a cloud into the sky. My eyes followed the stairway to its end, where my brain just could not accept what I saw. "Look again," my brain said. "We're looking," my eyes insisted. "It's really there." From the top of the clouds rose the decapitated peak of the mountain, its summit covered with snow. Clinging to the mountainside were dozens of multi-level palaces, a city of mansions, all with white column porticos, gilded terraces, and bronze braziers, glowing with 1,000 fires. I'm going to take another sip. Roads wound crazily up to the peak, where the largest palace gleamed against the snow. Precariously perched gardens bloomed with olive trees and rose bushes. I could make out an open-air market filled with colorful tents. A stone amphitheater built on one side of the mountain, a hippodrome, and a coliseum on the other. It was an ancient Greek city, except it wasn't in ruins. It was new and clean and colorful, the way Athens must have looked 2,500 years ago. This place can't be here, I told myself. The tip of a mountain hanging over New York City like a balloon-ton asteroid? How could something like that be anchored above the Empire State Building, in plain sight of millions of people, and not get noticed? But here it was. Here I was. My trip through Olympus was a daze. I passed some giggling wood nymphs who threw olives at me from their garden. Hawkers in the market offered to sell me ambrosia on a stick, and a new shield, and a genuine glitter weave replica of the Golden Fleece, as seen on Hephaestus TV. The Nine Muses were tuning their instruments for a concert in the park while a small crowd gathered. Satyrs and naiads and a bunch of good-looking teenagers who might have been minor gods and goddesses. Nobody seemed worried about an impending civil war. In fact, everybody seemed in a festive mood. Several of them turned to watch me pass and whispered to themselves. I climbed the main road toward the big palace at the peak. It was a reverse copy of the Palace of the Underworld. There, everything had been black and bronze. Here, everything glimmered white and silver. I realized Hades must have built his place to resemble this once. He wasn't welcome in Olympus except on the winter solstice. So he'd built his own Olympus underground. Despite my bad experience with him, I felt a little sorry for the guy. To be banished from this place seemed really unfair. It would make anybody bitter. Steps led up to a central courtyard. Past that, the throne room. Room really isn't the right word. The place made Grand Central Station look like a broom closet. Massive columns rose to a dome ceiling, which was gilded with moving constellations. 12 thrones, built for beings the size of Hades, were arranged in the inverted U, just like the cabins at Camp Half-Blood. An enormous fire crackled in the center hearth pit. The thrones were empty except for two at the end, the head throne on the right and the one to its imminent left. I didn't have to be told who the two gods were that were sitting there. Waiting for me to approach, I came toward them, my legs trembling. The gods were in giant human form, as Hades had been, but I could barely look at them without feeling a tingle, as if my body was starting to burn. Zeus, the lord of the gods, wore a dark blue pinstripe suit. He sat on a simple throne of solid platinum. He had a well-trimmed beard, marbled gray, and black like a storm cloud. His face was proud and handsome and grum, his eyes rainy gray. As I got near to him, the air crackled and smelled of ozone. The god sitting next to him was his brother, without a doubt, but he was dressed very differently. He reminded me of a beachcomber from Key West. He wore leather sandals, khaki Bermuda shorts, and a Tommy Bahama shirt with coconuts and parrots all over it. His skin was deeply tanned, his hands scarred like an old-time fisherman's. His hair was black, like mine. His face had that same brooding look that always gotten me branded a rebel, but his eyes, sea green, like mine, were surrounded by sun crinkles that told me he smiled a lot too. His throne was a deep-sea fisherman's chair, but it was the simple swiveling kind, with a black leather seat and a built-in holster for a fishing pole. Instead of a pole, the holster held a bronze trident, flickering with green light around the tips. The gods weren't moving or speaking, but there was tension in the air, as if they'd just finished an argument. I approached the fisherman's throne and knelt to his feet. Father, I dare not look up. My heart was racing. I could feel the energy emanating. That's what the word is. Emanating, my bad. From the two gods. If I said the wrong thing, I had no doubt they could blast me into dust. To my left, Zeus spoke. Should you not address the master of this house first, boy? I kept my head down and waited. Peace, brother, Poseidon finally said. His voice stirred my oldest memory, that warm glow I remembered as a baby, the sensation of this god's hand on my forehead. The boy defers to his father. This is only right. You still claim him, then? Zeus asked, menacingly. You claim this child you have sired against our sacred oath. I have admired my wrongdoing. I have admitted my wrongdoing, Poseidon said. Now, I would hear him speak. Wrongdoing. A lump welled up in my throat. What? Was that all I was? Wrongdoing? The result of a god's mistake? I have spared him once already, Zeus grumbled, daring to fly through my domain. Pah! I should have blasted him out of the sky for his impudence. And risk destroying your own master bolt? Poseidon asked calmly. Let us hear him out, brother. Zeus grumbled for some more. I shall listen, he decided. Then I shall make up my mind whether or not to cast his boy down from Olympus. Perseus, Poseidon said, look at me. I did. I wasn't sure what I saw in his face. There was no clear sign of love or approval. Nothing to encourage me. It was like looking at the ocean. Some days, you could tell what mood it was in. Most days, though, it was unreadable, mysterious. I got the feeling Poseidon really didn't know what to think of me. He didn't know whether he was happy to have me as a son or not. In a strange way, I was glad that Poseidon was so distant. If he tried to apologize, told me he loved me, or even smiled, it would have felt fake. Like a human dad making some lame excuse for not being around. I could live with that, after all. I wasn't sure about him yet, either. Address Lord Zeus, boy. Poseidon told me, tell him your story. So I told Zeus everything, just as it happened. I took out the metal cylinder, which began sparking in Sky God's presence, and laid it to his feet. There was a long silence, broke only by the crackle of the hearth fire. Zeus opened his palm. The lightning bolt flew into it. As he closed his fists, the metallic points flattened into electricity, until he was holding what looked more like a classic thunderbolt, a 20-foot javelin of arching, hissing energy that made the hairs on my scalp rise. I sense the boy tells the truth, Zeus muttered. But that Ares would do such a thing, it is most unlike him. He is proud and impulsive, Poseidon said. It runs in the family. Lord? I asked. Will said, yes. Ares didn't act alone. Someone else, something else, came up with the idea. I described my dreams and the feeling I had on the beach, that momentary breath of evil that seemed to stop the world and made Ares back off from killing me. In the dreams, I said, this voice told me to bring the bolt to the underworld. Ares hinted that he'd been having dreams too. I think he was being used, just as I was, to start a war. You are accusing Hades after all. No, I asked. I mean, Lord Zeus, I'm in the presence of Hades. This feeling on the beach was different. It was the same I felt when I got close to that pit. That was the entrance. That was the entrance to Tartarus, wasn't it? Something powerful and evil was stirring down there. Something even older than the gods. Poseidon and Zeus looked at each other. They had a quick, intense discussion in ancient Greek. I only caught one word. Father. Poseidon made some kind of suggestion, but Zeus cut him off. Poseidon tried to argue. Zeus held up his hand angrily.
We will speak of this no more, Zeus said. I must go personally to purify this thunderbolt in the waters of Lemnos, to remove that human taint from its metal.
Harsh. He rose and looked at me. His expression softened just a fraction of a degree.
You've done me a service, boy. You heroes could have accomplished as much.
I had help, sir, I said. Grover Underwood and Annabeth Chase.
To show my thanks, Percy Jackson, I shall spare your life. I do not trust you, Perseus Jackson. I do not like what your arrival means for the future of Olympus. But for the sake of peace in the family, I shall let you live.
Thank you, sir.
Do not presume to fly again. Do not let me find you here when I return. Otherwise, you shall taste this bolt, and it shall be your last sensation.
Thunder shook the palace with a blinding flash of lightning. Zeus was gone. I was alone in the throne room with my father.
Your uncle,
Poseidon sighed,
has always had a flair for dramatic exits. I think he would have done well as the god of theater.
An uncomfortable silence. Sir, I said. Oh, sorry. Oh, that's definitely the spaghetti. What was in that pit? Poseidon regarded me.
Have you not guessed?
Kronos, I said. The king of the Titans. Even in the throne room of Olympus, far away from Tartarus, the name Kronos darkened the room, made the hearth fire seem not quite so warm on my back. Poseidon gripped his trident.
In the first war, Percy, Zeus cut out Father Kronos into 1,000 pieces, just as Kronos had done to his own father, Uranos. Zeus cast Kronos' remains into the darkest pit of Tartarus. The Titan army was scattered, their mountain fortress of Etna destroyed.
Oh, sorry, I was just turning on the music.
Their monstrous allies driven to the farthest corners of the earth. And yet Titans cannot die, any more than we gods can. Whatever is left of Kronos is still alive in some hideous way, still conscious in his eternal pain, still hungering for battle.
He's healing, I said. He's coming back. Poseidon shook his head.
From time to time, over the eons, Kronos has stirred. He enters men's nightmares and breathes evil thoughts. He wakens restless monsters from the depths. But to suggest he could rise from the pit is another thing.
That's what he intends. That's what he tends, Father. That's what he said. Poseidon was silent for a long time. Lord Zeus closed discussion on this matter. He will not allow talk of Kronos. You have completed your quest, child. That is all you need to do. But I stopped myself. Are you going to do no good? It would very possibly anger the only god who I had on my side. As your wish, Father. A faint smile played on his lips. Obedience does not come naturally to you, does it? No, sir.
I must take some blame for that, I suppose. The sea does not like to be restrained.
He rose to his full height and took up his trident. Then he shimmered and became the size of a regular man, standing directly in front of me.
You must go, child. First, know that your mother has returned.
I stared at him, completely stunned. My mother?
You will find her at home. Hades sent her when you recovered his helm. Even the Lord of Death pays his debts.
My heart was pounding. I couldn't believe it. Would you... I wanted to ask if Poseidon would come with me to see her, but then I realized that was ridiculous. I imagined loading the sea god into a taxi and taking him to the Upper East Side if he wanted to see my mom all these years. He would have.
And there was Smelly Gabe to think about.
Poseidon's eyes took on a little sadness.
When you return home, Percy, you must make an important choice. You'll find a package waiting in your room.
Package?
You'll understand when you see it. No one can choose your path, Percy. You must decide.
I nodded, though. I didn't know what he meant.
Your mother is a queen among women, Poseidon said wishfully. I had not met such a mortal in 1,000 years. Still, I'm sorry you were born, child. I have brought you a hero's fate, and a hero's fate is never happy. It is never anything but tragic.
I tried not to feel hurt. Here was my own dad, telling me he was sorry I'd been born.
I don't mind, Father. Not yet, perhaps, he said. Not yet. But it was an unforgivable mistake on my part. I'll leave you then. I bowed awkwardly. I won't bother you again.
I was 5 steps away when he called,
Perseus!
I turned. There was a different light in his eyes, a fiery kind of pride.
You did well, Perseus. Do not misunderstand me. Whatever else you do, know that you are mine. You are a true son of the sea god.
Aww. As I walked back to the city of the gods, conversation stopped. The muses paused their concert, people and satyrs and naiads all turning toward me, their faces filled with respect and gratitude. And as I passed, they knelt, as if I were some kind of hero. 15 minutes later, still in trance, I was back on the streets of Manhattan. I caught a taxi to my mom's apartment, rang the doorbell, and there she was, my beautiful mother, smelling of peppermint and licorice. The weariness and worry evaporated from her face as soon as she saw me. Percy! Oh, thank goodness. Oh, my baby. She crushed the air right out of me. We stood in the hallway as she cried and ran her hands through my hair. I'll admit it, my eyes were a little misty too. I was shaking. I was so relieved to see her. She told me she just appeared at the apartment that morning, scaring Gabe half out of his wits. She didn't remember anything since the Minotaur. Couldn't believe it was Gabe. It was when Gabe told her I was a wanted criminal, traveling across the country, blowing up national monuments. She'd been going out of her mind with worry all day because she hadn't heard the news. Gabe had forced her to go into work, saying she had a month's salary to make up and she'd better get started. I swallowed back my anger and told her my own story. I tried to make it sound less scary than it had been, but that wasn't easy. I was just trying to get to the fight of Ares when Gabe's voice interrupted from the living room. Hey, Sally, that meatloaf done yet or what? She closed her eyes. He isn't going to be happy to see you, Percy. The store got 500,000 phone calls today from Los Angeles. Something about free appliances? Percy, you dog. Oh yeah, about that. She managed a weak smile. Just don't make him angry, alright? Come on. In the month I'd been gone, the apartment had turned into Gabeland. Garbage with ankle-deep Garbage was ankle deep on the carpet. The sofa had been reupholstered in beaten cans. Dirty socks and underwear hung off the lampshades. Gabe and three of his big goony friends were playing poker at the table. When Gabe saw me, his cigar dropped out of his mouth. His face got redder than lava. "You got some nerve coming, you little punk. I thought the police." "He's not a fugitive after all," my mom interjected. "Isn't that wonderful, Gabe?" Gabe looked back and forth between us. He didn't think my homecoming was so wonderful. "Bad enough I had to give back your life insurance money, Sally," growled. "Give me the phone. I'll call the cops." "Gabe, no." He raised her elbows. "Did you just say no? You think I'm gonna put up with this punk again? I can still press charges against him for ruining my Camaro." But he raised his hand, and my mother flinched. For the first time, I realized something. Gabe had hit my mother. I didn't know when or how much, but I was sure he'd done it. Maybe it had been going on for years when I wasn't around. The balloon of anger started expanding my chest. I came toward Gabe, instinctively taking out the pen from my pocket. Slam. "What, punk? You gonna write on me? You touch me, and you're going to jail forever. You understand?" "Hey, Gabe," said he interrupted. "He's just a kid." Gabe looked at him resentfully and mimicked in a falsetto voice, "Just a kid." His other friends laughed like idiots. I'll be nice to you, punk." Gabe showed me his tobacco-stained teeth. "I'll give you 5 minutes to get your stuff and clear out. A threat? I call the police." "Gabe," my mother pleaded. He ran away. Gabe told her, "Let him stay gone." I was itching to uncap Riptide, but even if I did, the blade wouldn't hurt humans. Gabe, by his loosest definition, was human. My mother took my arm. "Please, Percy, come on. We'll go to your room." I let her pull me away, my hand still trembling with rage. My room had been completely filled with Gabe's junk. There were stacks of used car batteries, a rotting bouquet of sympathy flowers, with a card from somebody who'd seen his Barbara Walters interview. "Gabe is just upset, honey," my mother told me. "I'll talk to him later. I'm sure it'll work out. Come on." "Mom, it'll never work out. Not as long as Gabe's here." She wrung her hands nervously. I'll take you to work with me for the rest of the summer. The fall. Maybe there's another boarding school." "Mom." She lowered her eyes, trying to Percy. I need some time." The package appeared on my bed. At least, I could have sworn it hadn't been there a moment ago before. It was all battered cardboard box, about the right size to fit a basketball. The address of the mailing slip was in my own handwriting. "The Gods of Olympus, 600th floor, Empire State Building, New York City. With best wishes, Percy Jackson." Ooh. Over the top, in black marker, in a man's clear, bold paint, was the address of our apartment and the words, "Return to sender." Suddenly, I understand what Poseidon had told me on Olympus. A package, a decision. Whatever else you do, know that you are mine. You are a true son of the sea god. Mother, "Mom, do you want Gabe gone?" "It isn't that simple. Mom, just tell me. That jerk has been hitting you. Do you want him gone or not?" She hesitated, then nodded, almost imperfectly. "Yes, Percy, I do. I'm trying to get up my courage to tell him. But you can't do this for me. You can't solve my problems." I looked at the box. I could solve her problem. I wanted to slice that package open, plop it on the poker table, and take it out of what was inside. I could start my very own statue garden, right there in the living room. That's what a Greek hero would do in the stories. Thought, that's what Gabe deserves. But a hero's story always ends in tragedy. Poseidon had told me that. I remember the underworld. I Thought about Gabe's spirit drifting forever in the fields of asphodel, or condemned to some hideous torture behind the barbed wire of the fields of punishment, an eternal poker game, sitting up to his waist in boiling oil listening to opera music. Did I have the right to send someone there? Even Gabe? A month ago, I wouldn't have hesitated. Now? I can do it, I told my mom. One look inside this box, and it'll never bother you again. She glanced at the package and seemed to understand immediately. No, Percy, she said, stepping away. You can't! Poseidon called you a queen, I told you. He said he hadn't met a woman like you in 1,000 years. Her cheeks flushed. Percy, you deserve better than this, Mom. You should go to college, get your degree. You can write your novel. Meet a nice guy, maybe. Live in a nice house. You don't need to protect me anymore by staying with Gabe. Let me get rid of him. She wiped a tear off her cheek. You sound so much like your father, she said. He offered to stop the tide for me once. He offered to build me a palace at the bottom of the sea. He thought he could solve all my problems with a wave of his hand. What's wrong with that? Her multicolored eyes seemed to search inside me. I think you know, Percy. I think you're enough like me to understand. If my life is going to mean anything, I have to live it myself. I can't let a god take care of me. Or my son. I have to find the courage on my own. Your quest has reminded me of that. We listened to the sound of poker chips and swearing ESPN from the living room television. I'll leave the box. If he threatens you. She looked pale, but she nodded. Where'll you go, Percy? Half-Blood Hill. For the summer or forever? I guess it depends. We locked eyes, and I sensed that we had an agreement. We would see how things stood at the end of the summer. She kissed my forehead. You'll be a hero, Percy. You'll be the greatest of all. I took one last look around my bedroom. I had a feeling I'd never see it again, and I walked with my mother to the front door. Leaving so punk? Gabe called after me. Good riddance. I had one last twinge of doubt. How could I turn down the perfect chance to take revenge on him? I was leaving here without saving my mother. Hey, Sally. Hey, Sally, he yelled. How about that meatloaf, huh? A steely look of anger flared in my mother's eyes. I thought just maybe I was leaving her in good hands after all. Her own. Meatloaf is coming right up, dear, Gabe. Meatloaf surprise. She looked at me and winked. The last thing I saw as the door swung was my mother staring at Gabe, as if she was contemplating how he would look as a garden statue. Oh boy, Gabe is gonna be oh boy, this is gonna be that's a doozer. All right, moving on to chapter 22. The prophecy comes true. We were the first heroes to return alive to Half-Blood Hill since Luke. So, of course, everybody treated us as if we'd won some reality TV contest. According to camp tradition, we wore laurel wreaths to a big feast prepared in our honor, then led a procession down to the bonfire where we got to burn the burial shrouds our cabins had made for us in our absence. Annabeth's shroud was so beautiful, gray silk with embroidered owls. I told her to seem ashamed not to bury her in it. She punched me and told me to shut up. Being the son of Poseidon, I didn't have any clubmates, so the Ares cabin had volunteered to make my shroud. They'd taken an old bedsheet and painted a smiley face with X'd out eyes around the border, and the word loser painted really big in the middle. It was fun to burn. As Apollo's cabin led the sing-along and passed out the s'mores, I was surrounded by my old Hermes cabin mates, Annabeth's friends from Athena, and Grover's satyr buddies, who were admiring the brand new searcher's license he'd received from the Council of Clovenel's elders. The council had given Grover's performance on the quest brave to the point of indigestion, horns and whiskers above anything we had seen in the past. The only ones not in the party mood were Clarice and her cabin mates, whose poisonous looks told me they'd never forgive me for disgracing their dad. That was okay with me. Even Denosius' welcome home speech wasn't enough to dampen my spirits. Yeah. So the little brat didn't get himself killed. Now he'll have an even bigger head. Well, it's all for that. In other announcements, there will be no canoe racing this Saturday. I moved back into cabin 3, but I didn't feel so lonely anymore. I had my friends to train me with during the day. At night, I lay awake and listened to the sea, knowing my father was out there. Maybe he wasn't quite sure about me yet. Maybe he hadn't wanted me born. But he was watching. So far, he was proud of what I had done. As for my mother, she had a chance at a new life. Her letter arrived a week after I got to the camp. She told me Gabe had left mysteriously, disappeared off the face of the planet in fact. She reported him missing to the police, but she had a funny feeling they would never find him. I love the idea that Percy's mom just literally committed a felony or committed potential murder. On a completely unrelated subject, she sold her first life-size concrete sculpture entitled The Poker Player to a collector through an art gallery in Soho. She gotten so much money for it, she put a deposit down on her new apartment and made a payment on her first semester's tuition at NYU. The Soho Gallery was clamoring for more of her work, which they called a huge step forward in super ugly neuralism. But don't worry, my mom wrote, I'm done with sculpture. I've disposed of that box of tools you left me. Time for me to turn to writing. At the bottom, she wrote, P.S. Percy, I found a good private school here in the city. I've put up a deposit down to hold you a spot in case you want to roll in 7th grade. You could live at home, but if you want to go year-round at Halfwood Hill, I'll understand. I folded the note carefully and set it on my bedside table. Every night before I went to sleep, I read it again and tried to decide how to answer her. On the 4th of July, the whole camp gathered at the beach for fireworks display at Cabin 9. Being Hephaestus' kids, they weren't going to settle for a few lame red, white, and blue expressions. They anchored a barge offshore and loaded it with rockets the size of a Patriot missiles. According to Annabeth, who'd seen the show before, the blasts would be sequenced so tightly they'd look like frames of animation across the sky. The finale was supposed to be a couple of 100-foot-tall Spartan warriors who would crackle to life above the ocean, fight a battle, then explode into a million colors. As Annabeth and I were spreading a picnic blanket, Grover showed up to tell us goodbye. He was dressed in his usual jeans and t-shirt and sneakers. In the last few weeks, he started to look older, almost high school age. His goatee had gotten thicker, he put on weight, his horns had grown at least an inch, but he now had to wear his Rasta cap all the time to pass as human. I'm off, he said. I just came to say, well, you know. I tried to feel happy for him. After all, it wasn't every day a satyr got permission to look for the great god Pan. It was hard saying goodbye. I'd only known Grover a year, yet he was my oldest friend. Annabeth gave him a hug. She told him to keep his fake feet on. I asked him where he was going to search first. Kind of a secret, he said, looking embarrassed. I wish you could come with me, guys. But humans and Pan, we understand. You got enough tin cans for the trip? Yep. And you remember your reed pipes? Jeez, Annabeth, he grumbled. You're like an old mama goat. But he didn't really sound annoyed. He gripped his walking stick and slung a backpack over his shoulders. He looked like any hitchhiker you might see on an American highway. Nothing like that. Nothing like the little runty boy I used to defend from bullies at Yancey Academy. Well, he said, wish me luck. He gave Annabeth another hug. He clapped me on the shoulder and then headed back through the dunes. Fireworks exploded to life overhead. Hercules killing the Neiman lion. Artemis chasing the boar. George Washington, who by the way was the son of Athena, crossing the Delaware. Hey Grover, I called. He turned at the edge of the woods. Wherever you're going, I hope they make good enchiladas. Grover grinned, and then he was gone. The trees closing around him. We'll see him again, Annabeth said. I tried to believe it. The fact that no searcher had ever come back in 2,000 years. Well, I decided not to think about that. Grover would be the first. He had to be. July passed. I spent my days devising new strategies for capture the flag and making alliances with the other cabins to keep the banner out of Ares' hands. I got to the top of the climbing wall for the first time without getting scorched by lava. From time to time, I walk past the big house, glance up at the attic windows, think about the oracle. I tried to convince myself that its prophecy had to come to completion. We shall go west and face the god who has turned. Been there, done that. Even the traitor god had turned out to be Ares rather than Hades. You shall find what was stolen and see its safe return. Check. One master bolt delivered. One helm of darkness back on Hades' oily head. You shall be betrayed by one who calls you a friend. This line still bothered me. Ares had pretended to be my friend and betrayed me. That must be what the oracle meant. And you shall fail to save what matters most in the end. I failed to save my mom, but only because I let her save herself. I knew that was the right thing. So why was I still uneasy? The last night of the summer session came all too quickly. Campers only had one last meal together. We burned down part of our diner for the gods. As the bonfire, the senior counselors awarded the end of summer beads. I got my own leather necklace when I saw the bead for the first summer. I was glad the firelight covered my blushing. The design was pitch black with a sea green trident shimmering in the center. The choice was unanimous, Gloot announced. This bead commemorates the first son of the sea god at this camp, and the quest he undertook into the darkest part of the underworld to stop a war. The entire camp got their feet and cheered. Even Ares' cabin felt obliged to stand. Athena's cabin steered Annabeth to the front so she could share in the applause. I'm not sure I'd ever felt as happy or sad as I did at that moment. I finally found a family. People who cared about me and thought I'd done something right. And in the morning, most of them would be leaving for the year. Next morning, I found a form letter on my bedside table. I knew Denosius must have filled it out because he stubbornly insisted on getting my name wrong. Dear Peter Jackson, if you intend to stay at Camp Half-Blood year-round, you must inform the big house by noon today. If you do not announce your intentions, we will assume you have vacated your cabin or died a horrible death. Cleaning harpies will begin work at sundown. They will be authorized to eat any unregistered campers. All personal articles left behind will be incinerated. All personal articles left behind will be incinerated in the lava pit. Have a nice day. Mr. D. Denosius, Camp Director, Olympian Council number 12. That's another thing about HHD. Deadlines just aren't real to me until I've stared one in the face. Summer was over. I still hadn't answered my mother or the camp about whether I'd be staying. Now I had only a few hours to decide. Decision should have been easy. I mean, 9 months of hero training or 9 months sitting in the classroom. Duh. But there was my mom to consider. For the first time, I had a chance to live with her for a whole year without Gabe. I had a chance to be at home and knock around the city in my free time. I remember what Annabeth had said so long ago on our quest. The real world is where the monsters are. That's where you learn whether you're any good or not. I thought about the fate of Talia, daughter of Zeus. I wonder how many monsters would attack me if I left Half-Blood Hill. If I stayed in our place for a whole school year, without Chiron or my friends around to help me. Will Mother and I even survive until the next summer? That was assuming the spelling tests and 5-paragraph essays don't kill me. I decided to go down to the arena and do some sword practice. Maybe that would clear my head. The campgrounds were mostly deserted, shimmering in the August heat. All the campers were in their cabins, packing up or running around with brooms and mops, getting ready for final inspection. Argus was helping some of the Aphrodite kids haul their Gucci suitcases and makeup kits over the hill, where the camp shuttle bus would be waiting to take them to the airport. Don't think about leaving yet, I told myself. Just train. I got to the sword fighters arena and found that Luke had the same idea. His gym bag was plopped at the edge of the stage. He was working solo, wailing on battle dummies with a sword I'd never seen before. It must have been a regular steel blade, because he was slashing the dummies' heads right off, stabbing through their straw-stuffed guts. His orange counselor shirt was dripping with sweat. His expression was so intense. His life might have really been in danger. I watched fascinated as he disemboweled the whole row of dummies, hacking off limbs and basically reducing them to a pile of straw and armor. They were only dummies. They still couldn't help being awed by Luke's skill. The guy was an incredible fighter. Made me wonder again how he possibly could have failed at his quest. Finally, he saw me and stopped mid-swing. Percy! Sorry, I said embarrassed. It's okay, he said, lowering his sword. Just doing some last-minute practice. Those dummies won't be bothering anybody anymore. Luke shrugged. We build new ones every summer. Now that his sword wasn't swirling around, I could see something odd about it. The blade was two different types. Metal. One edge bronze, the other steel. Luke noticed me looking at it. Oh, this? New toy. This is Backbiter. Backbiter? I'm gonna get a little more water. I just remember this is water. Luke turned the blade in the light so it glistened wickedly. One side is celestial bronze, the other is tempered steel. Works on mortals and immortals both. I thought about what Chiron told me when I started my quest, that a hero should never harm mortals unless absolutely necessary. I didn't know they could make weapons like that. They probably can't, Luke agreed. It's one of a kind. He gave me a tiny smile, then slid the sword into his scabbard. Listen, I was going to come looking for you. What do you say we go down to the woods one last time? Look for something to fight. I don't know why he hesitated. I should have felt relieved that Luke was being so friendly. Ever since I gotten back from his quest, he'd been acting a little distant. I was afraid he might resent me for all the attention I'd gotten. Think it's a good idea? I asked. Aw, come on. He rummaged in his gym bag and pulled out a 6-pack of Cokes. Drinks are on me. I stared at the Cokes, wondering where the heck he'd gotten them. There were no regular mortal sodas at the camp store. No way to smuggle them unless you talked to a satyr, maybe. Of course, the Magic Diner goblets would fill with anything you want. But it just didn't taste the same as the real Coke, straight out of a can. Sugar and caffeine. My willpower crumbled. Sure, I decided. Why not? We walked down to the woods and kicked around for some kind of monster to fight. It was too hot. All the monsters with any sense must have been taking siestas in their nice cool caves. We found a shady spot by the creek where a broken Clary's spear during the first Capture the Flag game. We sat on a big rock, drank our colas, and watched the sunlight in the woods. After a while, Luke said, "You miss being on a quest? With monsters attacking me every 3 feet? Are you kidding?" Luke raised an eyebrow. "Yeah, I miss it," I admitted. "You?" Shadow passed over his face. I was used to hearing from the girls how good-looking Luke was. At that moment, he looked weary and angry, not at all handsome. His blonde hair was gray in the sunlight. The scar on his face looked deeper than usual. I could imagine him as an old man. I've lived at Half-Blood Hill year-round since I was 14, he told me. Ever since Talia. Well, you know, I trained and trained and trained. I never got to be a normal teenager out there in the real world. And they threw me out one quest. When I come back, it was like, okay, ride's over. Have a nice life. He crumbled his Coke can and threw into the creek. It really shook me. One of the first things you'll learn at Camp Half-Blood is don't litter. You'll hear from the nymphs and naiads. They'll get even. You'll crawl into bed one night and you'll find sheets filled with centipedes and mud. The heck with laurel wreaths, he said. I'm not going to end up like those dusty trophies in the big house attic. You make it sound like you're leaving. Give me a twisted smile. Oh, I'm leaving. All right, Percy. I brought you down here to say goodbye. He snapped his fingers. A small fire burned a hole in the ground on my feet. Out crawled something glistening black, about the size of my hand. A scorpion. I started to go for my pen. I wouldn't, Luke cautioned. Pit scorpions can jump up to 15 feet. The stickers can pierce right through your clothes. You'll be dead in 60 seconds. Luke, what? Then it hit me. You'll be betrayed by one who calls you a friend. You. He stood calmly and brushed off his jeans. The scorpion paid him no attention. It kept its beady black eyes on me, clamping its pincers as it crawled onto my shoe. I saw a lot out there in the world, Percy, Luke said. Didn't you feel it? The darkness gathering. The monsters growing stronger. Didn't you realize how useless it all is? All the heroics, being pawns for the gods. They should have been overthrown thousands of years ago. But they've hung on, thanks to us half-bloods. I couldn't believe what was happening. Luke, you're talking about our parents, I said. He laughed. That's supposed to make me love them? Their precious Western civilization is a disease, Percy. It's killing the world. The only way to stop it is to burn it to the ground. Start over with something more honest. You're as clever as Ares. His eyes flared. Ares is a fool. He never realized the true master he was serving. If I had time, Percy, I could explain. But I'm afraid you won't live that long. The scorpion crawled onto my pants leg. There had to be a way out of this. I needed time to think. Kronos, I said. That's who you serve? That's who you serve. The air got colder. You should be careful with names, Luke warned. Kronos got you to steal the Master Bolt and the helm. He spoke to you in your dreams. Luke's eyes twitched. He spoke to you too, Percy. You should have listened. He's brainwashing you, Luke. You're wrong. He showed me that my talents are being wasted. You know what my quest was 2 years ago, Percy? My father, Hermes, wanted me to steal a golden apple from the garden of Hesperides and return it to Olympus. After all the training I'd done, that was the best he could think up? That's not an easy quest, I said. Hercules did it. Exactly, Luke said. What's the glory in repeating what others have done? All the gods know how to do is replay their past. My heart wasn't in it. The dragon in the garden gave me this. He pointed angrily at his scar. And when I came back, all I got was pity. I wanted to pull Olympus down stone by stone right then, but I bided my time. I began to dream of Kronos. He convinced me to steal something wonderful, something no hero had ever had the courage to take. When we went on that winter solstice field trip, while the other campers were asleep, I snuck into the throne room, took Zeus's master bolt right from his chair. Hades' helm of darkness, too. You wouldn't believe how easy it was. The Olympians are so arrogant. They never dreamed someone would dare steal from them. Their security is horrible. I was halfway across New Jersey before I heard the storm's rumbling. I knew they discovered my theft. The scorpion was sitting on my knee now, staring at me with its glittering eyes. I tried to keep my voice level. So why didn't you bring the items to Kronos? Luke smiled. I wavered. I got overconfident. Zeus sent out his sons and daughters to find the stolen bolt. Artemis, Apollo, my father, Hermes. But it was Ares who caught me. I could have beaten him, but I wasn't careful enough. He disarmed me, took the items of power, threatened to return them to Olympus, and burn me alive. Then Kronos' voice came to me, told me what to say. I put the idea in Ares' head about a great war between the gods. I said all he had to do was hide the items away for a while and watch the others fight. Ares got a wicked gleam in his eyes. I knew he was hooked. He let me go. I returned to Olympus before anyone noticed my absence. Luke drew his new sword. He ran his thumb down the flat of the blade as if he were hypnotized by its beauty. Afterward, the Lord of the Titans, he punished me with nightmares. I swore not to fail again. Back at Camp Half-Blood, in my dreams, I was told that a second hero would arrive. One who could be tricked into taking the bull and the helm the rest of the way. From Ares down to Tartarus. You summoned the Hellhound. That night in the forest. We had to make Chiron think the camp wasn't safe for you. So he would start you on your quest. We had to confirm his fears that Hades was after you, and it worked. The flying shoes were cursed, I said. They were supposed to drag me in the backpack into Tartarus. And they would have if you'd been wearing them. But you gave them to the satyr, which wasn't part of the plan. Grover messes up everything he touches. He even confused the curse. Luke looked down at the scorpion, which was now sitting on my thigh. You could have died in Tartarus, Percy. But don't worry. I'll leave you with my little friend to set things right. Talia gave her life to save you, I said, gritting my teeth. And this is how you were paid for? Don't speak of Talia! He shouted. The gods left her to die. That's one of the many things they will pay for. You're being used, Luke. You and Harry's both. Don't listen to Kronos. I've been used? Luke's voice turned shrill. Look at yourself. What has your dad ever done for you? Kronos will rise. You've only delayed his plans. You will cast the Olympians into Tartarus and drive humanity back to their caves. I'll accept the strongest, the ones who serve him. Call off the bug, I said. If you're strong, fight me yourself. Luke smiled. Nice try, Percy. But I'm not Ares. You can't bait me. My lord is waiting, and he's got plenty of quests for me to undertake. Luke! Goodbye, Percy. There is a new golden age coming. You won't be part of it. He slashed his sword in an arc and disappeared in a ripple of darkness. The scorpion lunged. I swatted it away with my hand and uncapped my sword. The thing jumped at me, and I cut it in half in midair. I was about to congratulate myself until I looked down at my hand. My palm had a huge red welt, oozing and smoking with yellow guck. The thing had got me after all. My ears pounded. My vision went foggy. The water, I thought. It healed me before. I stumbled to the creek and submerged my head, but nothing seemed to happen. The poison was too strong. My vision was getting dark. I could barely stand up. 60 seconds, Luke had told me. I had to get back to camp. If I collapsed here now, my body would be dinner for a monster. Nobody would ever know what happened. My legs felt like lead. My forehead was burning. I stumbled toward the camp, and the nymphs stared from their trees. "Help," I croaked. "Please." Two of them took my arms, pulled me along. I remember making it to a clearing. The counselor shouting for help. A centaur blowing a conch horn. Then everything went black. Oof. Things are getting dicey. And we're near the very end. I woke up with a drinking straw in my mouth. I was sipping something that tasted like liquid chocolate chip cookies. Nectar. I opened my eyes. I was propped in the bed in the sick room of the big house. My right hand bandaged like a club. Argus stood guard at the corner. Annabeth sat next to me, holding my nectar glass and dabbing a washcloth from my forehead. "Here we are again," I said. "You idiot," Annabeth said, which is how I knew she was overjoyed to see me conscious. "You were green and turning gray when we found you. If it weren't for Chiron's healing..." Now, Chiron's voice said,
Percy's constitution deserves some of the credit.
He was sitting near the foot of my bed in human form, which was why I hadn't noticed him yet. His lower half was magically compacted into the wheelchair. His upper half dressed in a coat and tie. He smiled, but his face looked weary and pale, the way it did when he'd been up all night grading Latin papers.
"How are you feeling?"
he asked. "Like my insides are being frozen, then microwaved."
"Yep. Considering that was pit scorpion venom, now you must tell me, if you can, exactly what happened."
Between sips of the nectar, I told him the story. The room was quiet for a long time. I can't believe that Luke. Annabeth's voice faltered. Her expression turned angry and said, Yes, I can believe it. May the gods curse him. He was never the same after his quest."
"This must be reported to Olympus," Chiron murmured. "I'll go at once."
"Luke is out there right now. I have to go after him." Luke shook his head.
"No, Percy. The gods
won't ever talk about Kronos," I snapped. Zeus declared the matter closed.
"Percy, I know this is hard, but you must not rush off for vengeance. You aren't ready."
I didn't like it. Part of me suspected Chiron was right. One look at my hand, and I knew I wasn't going to be sword fighting anytime soon. "Chiron, prophecy from the Oracle. It was about Kronos, wasn't it? Was I in it? And Annabeth? Chiron glanced nervously at the ceiling.
Percy, it isn't my place.
You've been ordered not to talk about it, haven't you? His eyes were sympathetic, but yes.
You will be a great hero, child. I will do my best to prepare you, if I'm right about the path ahead of you.
Thunder boomed overhead, rattling the windows.
All right,
Euron shouted,
fine.
He sighed in frustration.
The gods have their reasons, Percy. Knowing too much of your future is never a good thing.
We can't just sit back and do nothing, I said.
We will not sit back,
Chiron promised.
but you must be careful. Kronos wants you to become unraveled. He wants your life disrupted, your thoughts clouded with fear and anger. Do not give him what he wants. Train patiently. Your time will come.
Assuming I live that long. Ooh, excuse me. Chiron put his hand on my ankle.
You'll have to trust me, Percy. You will live. But first you must decide your path for this coming year. I cannot tell you the right choice.
I got the feeling that he had a very definite opinion, and it was taking all his willpower not to advise me.
But you must decide whether to stay at Camp Half-Blood year-round or return to the moral world for 7th grade and be a summer camper. Think of that. When I get back from Olympus, you must tell me your decision.
I wanted to protest. I wanted to ask him more questions, but his expression told me that told me there could be no more discussion. He had said as much as he could. I'll be back as soon as I
can.
John promised.
Argus will watch over you.
He glanced at Annabeth.
Oh, my dear. Whenever you're ready, they're here.
Who's here? Nobody answered. Chiron rolled herself out of the room. I heard the wheels of his chair clunk carefully down the steps, 2 at a time. Annabeth studied the ice in my drink. What's wrong? I asked her. Nothing. She sat the glass on the table. Just took your advice about something. You need anything? Yeah, help me out. I want to go outside. Percy, that isn't a good idea. I slid my legs out the bed. Annabeth caught me before I got crumbled onto the floor. Oof, man, my throat is really tired. A wave of nausea rolled over me. Annabeth said, I told you. I'm fine, I insisted. I didn't want to lie in bed like an invalid while Luke was out there planning to destroy the Western world. I managed to step forward, then another, still leaning heavily on Annabeth. Argus followed us outside, but he kept his distance. By the time we reached the porch, my face was beaded with sweat. My stomach had twisted into knots, but I had managed to make it all the way to the railing. It was dusk. The camp looked completely deserted. The cabins were dark and the volleyball pit silent. No canoes cut the surface of the lake. Beyond the woods and the strawberry fields, the Long Island Sound glittered in the last light of the sun. What are you gonna do? Annabeth asked me. I don't know. I told her I got the feeling Chiron wanted me to stay year-round, to put in more individual training time, but I wasn't sure that's what I wanted. I admitted I feel bad about leaving her alone, though, with only Clarice for company. Annabeth pursed her lips and then said quietly, I'm going home for the year, Percy. I stared at her. You mean to your dad's? She pointed toward the crest of Half-Blood Hill. Next to Thalia's pine tree, at the very edge of Camp's magical memories, a family stood silhouetted. 2 little children, a woman, and a tall man with blonde hair. He seemed to be waiting. The man was holding a backpack that looked like the one Annabeth gotten from Waterland in Denver. I wrote him a letter when we got back, Annabeth said. Just like you suggested, I told him I was sorry. I'd come home for the school year if he'd still want me. He wrote back immediately. We decided give it another try. That took guts. She pursed her lips. You won't try anything stupid during the school year, will you? At least, not without sending me an iris message. I managed to smile. I won't go looking for trouble. I usually don't have to. When I get back next summer, she said, we'll hunt down Luke. We'll ask for a request, but if we don't get approval, we'll sneak off and do it anyway. Agreed? Sounds like a plan worthy of Athena. She held out her hand, shook it. Take care, seaweed brain, Annabeth told me. Keep your eyes open. You too, wise girl. I watched her walk up the hill and join her family. She gave her father an awkward hug and looked back at the valley one last time. She touched Thalia's pine tree, then allowed herself to be led over the crest into the mortal world. For the first time I camped, I felt truly alone. I looked at Long Island, sound, and I remember my father saying, "The sea does not like to be restrained." I made my decision. I wondered if Poseidon were watching. Would he approve of my choice? I'll be back next summer, I promised him. I'll survive until then. After all, I'm your son. I'll ask Argus to take me down to cabin 3 so I could pack my bags for home. And with that, that is the very end of Percy. Wait, is it? Oh yeah, it is. The rest is just a sneak peek to the second book, Sea of Monsters. But first, I'm gonna finish off what's left of this. Oh, excuse me. And that is the end of the Percy Jackson book, Percy Jackson and the Olympians, The Lightning Thief. And yeah, there was a lot of stuff that was cut out from the original, in the movie. And yeah, I'm still disappointed that they cut out a lot of good stuff in it. Looking back at the book now, I just really get a more appreciation of the series, and I can't wait for the Netflix series. Sure, I know the casting I've heard is a little weird and might be off, but if Rick Riordan himself can see Percy Jackson and crew with these characters, it goes to show you there might be something good about it. But without further ado, I think it's about time we ended this fun little stream. And unfortunately, this will be the last book reading on account of these aren't really that popular, so if you want to read the books, I highly recommend reading them. They're really good. But until then, let's just give out a good let's get out a good raid, and tune in tomorrow, this afternoon, or before afternoonish. Yeah, probably around lunchtime, as we're going to continue our watching of Cyber 6. Have a nice day, everyone. Thanks for watching.